Imagine for a moment the hushed breath of the city above you. Paris, the city of light long after sunset. Traffic thins, apartment lamps dim, and somewhere in a distant courtyard a single cat blinks at the moon. Now, in your mind's eye, lift one cobblestone from the street and peer below. A sigh of ancient air rises, cool and faintly chalk-sweet. It smells of limestone dust and candle smoke. It murmurs of footsteps that have not echoed for centuries. It invites you to descend. As you settle under your blanket, picture a narrow stair spiraling down. With each quiet step you draw a slower breath. Down we drift, away from cafes and gas lamps, toward a realm where time seems to pause between heartbeats. Breathe in, the stone is cool against your fingertips. Breathe out, the soft hush of your own exhale mingles with a darkness older than Paris itself. Tonight we explore why one mortal hour in the catacombs would test even the bravest soul. Yet for you, safe and still, the journey will unfold in gentle cadence, inviting sleep rather than fear. When the story pauses, you may drift wherever dreams escort you, and if you wake before dawn, these passages will still be here, patient and unhurried. They have waited for centuries, they can wait for morning. Settle deeper, let the last city sounds fade. Below us lies nearly 300 kilometers of tunnels, enough to stretch from the Seine to the distant fields of Champagne, carved first as quarries, then filled with the remains of more than 6 million people. Tonight, we will follow torchlight down one quiet gallery, listening for the tender scratch of history upon the walls. Paris, 1785. You are Etienne Lenoir, a journeyman miner scarcely 24 years of age. Your pay is meager, 8 sous for every 12-hour shift, enough for bread and, perhaps, a candle stub. A royal ordinance has pressed you into night labor deep beneath the Faubourg Saint-Jacques. The city fathers wish its overcrowded cemeteries emptied. They wish the bones laid to rest in these abandoned quarries so that Paris may keep growing toward heaven. You, however, must crawl toward the opposite direction. A steward from the Inspection des Quarries, the new office created by Louis XVI to keep the ground from swallowing Paris whole, hands you a pine-pitch torch. It sputters with a sour hiss, bleeding orange against the stairwell's throat. Stone-worn steps spiral 40 meters downward, the diameter narrowing until shoulders brush damp walls. With every turn, the air cools, smelling of wet plaster and distant earth. Your lungs adjust, your eyes half close, not from weariness, but to spare the scant light. A last echo of carriage wheels above fades. The ceiling listens, the walls breathe. At the base of the stair, the quarry mouth yawns, a chamber rough cut, ceiling arched in chalky gray. Limestone dust drifts like pale pollen. Timber braces groan softly where weight has shifted. Some bear an inspector's red stamp. G.C. Guillaume Consolidé. Others remain unmarked, untrusted, and you step lightly when passing beneath. Voices carry oddly here, dulled yet resonant. A fellow laborer hums a church psalm to calm his nerves. Another traces a cross upon his chest each time droplets fall from the roof. Superstition and geology share the same vocabulary underground. Collapse, burial, salvation. Your task tonight is both simple and unfathomable. Transfer skeletal remains from carts lowered by winch into neat stacks along a newly walled gallery. The bones arrive bundled in burlap, the cloth spotted dark where marrow once lived. You learn to recognize femur by weight alone, skull by the hollow thud it offers when set upon another. Hands grow chalk white, and the torch smokes when grease touches flame. You do not speak of the occupants themselves. Some belonged to the Cimetière des Innocents, closed for stench and contagion, others to parish yards erased for new boulevards. Together they now require a second burial. A priest mutters a final blessing topside, but here below you are liturgist, sexton, and gravedigger in one. The ceiling listens, the walls breathe. Hours blur. Torch resin coats your lungs. Each time you straighten, the crown of your cap brushes stalactite needles. You and two companions pause to share a heel of rye. Candle stub wedged into a crevice casts trembling lips of light. Crumbs taste of limestone. Water stored in a corked goatskin smells faintly of moss. It has seeped through meters of sepulchral soil above. Conversation never rises above a whisper. Sound travels strangely, rebounding in pockets, returning a fraction of a second later like a half-remembered thought. One man swears he hears chanting from an adjoining drift. Another tells of a blind mason who wanders still, tapping walls with his hammer, seeking the way he has forgotten. Toward midnight, you carry a lantern down an unlit branch once used for stone extraction. Footprints vanish as the floor slopes. Here the ceiling lowers until you must stoop, torch held sideways to save your hair. In the glow, you glimpse faded quarry marks, 1742 scored by a carver's pick. Nearby a heart pierced by an arrow and two intertwined initials. Love, misery, profit. All hidden in the same chalk. Further on, the passage widens abruptly into a bell-shaped cavity, its base strewn with discarded rubble. The lantern flare reveals a single vertebra resting near your boot, ivory turned ochre with age. Who dropped it? Perhaps a careless worker, or perhaps the earth itself shifts and rearranges its charges while no one watches. You want to pocket the fragment, a souvenir against dread, but an older miner shakes his head. Leave what is not yours. He reignites your courage with a simple phrase you will repeat for the rest of the night. The living keep watch. The dead keep quiet. Some time after the hourglass empties a third time, a groan rolls through the gallery. It registers first in your knees, then in your teeth. Timbers bow, dust filters from fissures overhead, glittering like pale embers. Instinct, older than speech, urges you to stillness. Torches lower, no one dares cough. Then silence. Only your pulse remains, faint and measured. A companion murmurs, "Hold steady." The ceiling listens. Another heartbeat. The tension bleeds away. You will survive this moment, yet each breath now tastes of possibility undone. The quiet hour. In that hush following near disaster, you sense how slender the margin between Paris and oblivion truly is. Above, carriage wheels rattle across paving stones first laid by Roman masons. Below, pillars and arches, mapped painstakingly by Chief Inspector Charles Axel Guillaume and his successors, ward off the hunger of gravity. Yet even his surveys cannot calm every tremor. You tie fresh hemp ropes between pillars the way sailors rig lines in a rising gale. Each knot is a small prayer. Hold firm, hold fast. Your anchor phrase returns. The ceiling listens, the walls breathe. And so do you, slower now. Dawn's first echo. At last a bell clangs down the stair. Shift's end. You stub the torch on a damp sill. Watch it gutter out with a sigh. In darkness, embers linger like miniature suns suspended in pitch. Then, one by one, they dim. The ascent is harder than descent, muscles stiff from stooping protest each step. Somewhere overhead, bakers' ovens are already warming. When you breach the surface, dawn paints the Seine in pale blue, grey. Your face, dust-masked and silent, passes unnoticed among milk sellers and fishmongers. You pause, glance at the cobbles beneath your boots, and wonder how thin that stone skin truly is. You walk on. The city yawns awake, oblivious to the breathing labyrinth that keeps its foundations whole. The King Who Feared, Collapse. Close your eyes and picture Paris in the winter of 1776. The Seine lies glass-still beneath a pale sky, its quays hushed by frost. Fireplaces gutter behind shuttered windows, and the smell of cedar mingles with the sharper scent of coal. Horses clop past dim street lamps, their iron shoes ringing like small hammers on an anvil. Yet beneath those hooves, beneath the cellars and the wine stores and the crypts, an older road tunnels on. The ancient limestone quarries, mined since Roman times. Citizens whisper about sudden sinkholes, the ground swallowing carts whole near the Rue d'Enfer, a coach tilting like a toy boat into a brand new cavity by the Jardin du Luxembourg. One December night, a baker returning home near the Place de l'Université hears what he thinks is thunder. The next morning, a yawning scar splits the roadway. Workers lower lanterns and see only pound-cake-coloured stone drifting off into darkness. News of each collapse travels quickly, rising through the salons of the wealthy, gaining embroidery along the way. Entire streets swallowed, chimneys sliding like chess pieces, crypts cracking open to spill coffins across basements. Paris, the city of philosophers and portraits, begins to feel hollow underfoot. And the court at Versailles, 20 kilometers away, cannot ignore the tremor of anxiety that shakes its capital. The earth holds memory. Louis Auguste, newly crowned King of France as Louis XVI, is not yet the tired monarch history remembers. He is 22, with clear blue eyes and a jeweler's knack for watchmaking. He enjoys solving difficult locks, taking apart telescopes, and reading treatises on navigation. When stories of collapsing streets reach Versailles, he does not shrug them off as mere gossip. Instead, he requests reports from the Lieutenant General de Police and from the Corps des Ponts et Chaussées, engineers tasked with bridges and roads. The documents that land on his secretary are sober reading. They speak of overmined ground on the left bank where ancient galleries run in tangled tiers, sometimes 3 levels deep. They map rough outlines of tunnels under the Faubourg Saint-Jacques, the Observatoire, and even parts of the Marais. Many passages are unmapped. Some stretch south toward Montrouge in meandering ribs. A single cave-in might drag a whole neighborhood down like a breached ship. For a king fascinated by mechanisms, the idea of his capital resting on a fragile clockwork of voids is intolerable. He pictures Paris as a fine timepiece. Each street a gear, each church a jewel, each citizen a tiny oscillating spring. And someone has carved out the supporting plate beneath. If the platine fails, the gears will grind to silence. Birth of the Inspection Générale des Carrières. On 4 April 1777, Louis XVI signs an edict creating the Inspection Générale des Carrières, the first governmental agency dedicated to cataloguing, stabilizing, and mapping abandoned quarries. Its mission is concise. 1. Survey every known underground gallery within the limits of Paris. 2. Consolidate weak ceilings with masonry or timber where necessary. 3. Backfill or seal passages that threaten collapse. 4. Keep meticulous plans so future builders can trust the ground beneath them. The edict names a young engineer, Charles Axel Guillaume, as the inaugural Inspecteur Général. But Guillaume will need help, and so the Crown authorizes the hiring of auxiliary surveyors, draftsmen, and master masons. Among the first to answer the call is a modest Breton engineer named Guillaume Coutel. His exact birth date is lost to parish fires, but his handwriting survives in margin notes and field books, neat, slanted script marred by limestone grit. Who was Guillaume Coutel? Coutel stands roughly 5 feet 6, narrow-shouldered, eyes the ash grey of winter seas. He learned geometry by copying the vaulted roofs of Saint-Malo into a school notebook, tracing how parabolic curves carry weight. Drafted at 17 to expand coastal fortifications, He discovered he preferred measuring stones to firing cannon. When the call for quarry inspectors echoed through the provinces, he took a coach to Paris with 2 shirts, his father's brass compass, and a letter of recommendation from a retired colonel. Coutel's first impression of the capital is neither grandeur nor filth, but sound. The cacophony of hooves, hawkers, and church bells vibrating through pave. He wonders if the noise seeps below, rattling the fragile pillars left by medieval miners. Perhaps the city is slowly shaking itself apart. In the warmth of a May afternoon, Coutel and Guillaume stand at the mouth of a neglected shaft near the Rue d'Enfer. Above them, street vendors shout. Below, the shaft exhales cold breath that hazes their lantern flames. A mason ties hemp rope around a cast iron windlass, and they begin lowering themselves into the unknown. The ladder rungs sweat moisture. At 10 feet, the sound of Paris becomes a faint heartbeat. At 40, it ceases entirely. They step onto a chalk dust floor cut centuries prior. The gallery ahead is rough-hewn, ceiling scarcely higher than a man's hat. Supports are absent. The walls curve inwards like bookends hoping to close. Guillaume unfolds a parchment and notes. Heading southeast, 172 degrees, 2 meters width, dangerous arch. Coutel follows with a steel stylus, scratching a shallow X on weakened blocks. This first inspection will span 5 hours, mark 43 defects, and, in Coutel's words, change his comprehension of darkness forever. Cartography of night. Mapping the quarries proves as treacherous as reinforcing them. No complete plan exists. Miners rarely bothered with scale drawings. Some tunnels end in abrupt bulges called bellies, where stone was scraped until the roof threatened to fall. Others fork unexpectedly, their branches choked with silt or strewn with fossil shells the size of wafers. Coutel learns to pace exact distances in pitch-black corridors. Left heel placed against right toe, 54 steps to approximate 40 meters. He fills small notebooks with columns labeled azimuth, pitch, height, condition. Back at the surface, he inks clean tracings upon vellum under Guillaume's supervision. At night, lantern grease still clings to his cuffs. He dreams of tunnels overlapping like strands of braided hair, of daylight pouring through cracks that are not there. He wakes, counts ceiling beams in his rented attic, reassures himself that they are sound. Stabilizing threatened galleries requires delicate judgment. Too few pillars and the roof sinks, too many and workers cannot pass. Coutel visits the Bibliothèque du Roi to consult Vitruvius and new English treatises on mining arches. He concludes that ring vaults, low, semicircular arches built at intervals, can distribute weight evenly, while haunched piers can buttress dangerous corners. He and Guillaume devise a 2-color system, bricks tinted red for new supports, plain for old. In torchlight, the additions glow like fresh scar tissue. Meanwhile, masons above ground pour lime mortar by moonlight. Timber wagons clatter down post-curfew alleys toward inspection shafts. Teams work in silence. The king does not wish panic. Coutel's signature appears at the bottom of requisition slips for 4,000 bricks, Rue Saint-Jacques, or 6 oaken beams, Cloître Notre-Dame. Each item is another stitch, sewing Paris back to itself. On 16 December 1778, a section of the Rue d'Enfer collapses without warning, swallowing part of a guardhouse and 6 meters of paved road. Miraculously, no one dies. Yet the cavity, 14 meters deep, exposes a nest of galleries like the ribs of a stranded whale. Coutel arrives before dawn, lantern swinging at his hip. He kneels at the edge, peers into the gloom, and feels an almost paternal sorrow. The city has broken a bone. For 2 months, workers shore the hole with crib work, then lower rubble by sling to backfill the weakest arches. Paris crowds watch, holding scented handkerchiefs to their noses, not for stench, but for fear. The king's engineers move like shipwrights within an upturned hull, their voices echoing in a cavity that was never meant to be heard. In his diary, Coutel writes, "We seal the wound, but scars remain hidden. The earth holds memory." Bones join the engineers. While Guillaume's team braces tunnels, another problem plagues city officials: overflowing cemeteries. The Cimetière des Innocents, used for nearly 6 centuries, leaches putrid water into nearby basements. In 1780, after a wall bursts and spills corpses into a neighboring restaurant's cellar, the Conseil d'État orders the cemetery closed. 2 years later, they decide to transfer remains into the reinforced abandoned quarries on the left bank. Thus, the Inspection de Carrière inherits a second duty. Coutel finds himself drawing floor plans not only for masonry, but for ossuary design. Neat rows for femurs, ornamental heart-shaped stacks for skulls. He calculates airflow to prevent lanterns from guttering among the gases of decay. Night after night, carts creak down ramps carved through basement arches, dumping bones in black heaps to be sorted at dawn. The living may fear collapse. The dead have already surrendered to it. By 1789, the first barricades rise on the streets above. Revolt cracks through Paris faster than any sinkhole. Guillaume, loyal to the crown, is briefly arrested. His ledgers disappear into revolutionary archives. Coutel keeps his head down, literally, finishing a ring vault near the Barrière d'Enfer, while muskets fire uptown. He and his crew share stale bread beside neatly stacked tibias, listening to rumour drift through ventilation shafts. Palaces stormed, titles abolished, heads carted to squares. In the catacombs, hierarchy simplifies to stone or void. A pillar either stands or it yields. A gallery either breathes or it falls silent forever. Coutel survives the political turning by remaining indispensable. When the new municipal council seeks men who know the underworld, they find his name already written in chalk on every wall. Records show Coutel signing his final inspection report in 1795. He recommends a new wall at La Tombe-Issoire and the sealing of an unstable drift near the Ancien Observatoire. His script, once slender, has grown deliberate, strokes as thick as mortar seams. Legend says he celebrated by walking the length of the Pont Neuf at dawn, pausing at each stone balustrade to feel the solid earth beneath. Then he took a modest pension and bought a garden plot in Gentilly, where he grew white roses the colour of limestone. Guillaume dies 2 years later, buried in Père Lachaise. Coutel reportedly visits the grave only at twilight, touching the headstone and whispering, "The earth holds memory." When he himself passes in 1804, neighbours find under his bed a single brass compass and a roll of vellum titled Plan Général du Sud-Est Souterrain de Paris. Its scale reaches nearly 3 meters when unfurled. Much of modern Paris still stands upon its careful ink. Legacy underfoot. Today, engineers walking the inspection tunnels carry LED lamps and laser theodolites. Yet, they still call up to surface crews in time-honored code: 3 taps for open the shaft, 2 for lower the beam. On field laptops, they overlay 3D point clouds with the parchment tracings of Guillaume and Coutel. The match is often within the breadth of a thumbnail. When a stabilization project completes, workers sign the wall in graphite. Consolidé, 2024. Équipe B. Below, in reddish pigment, the older note remains. Consolidé, 1779. Coutel. Centuries converse without words. The earth holds memory. Whispered legends beneath the stones. Picture a lantern guttering at the threshold of a nameless corridor. Its wick flares, then settles, revealing letters scratched with a nail. Arrête, c'est ici l'empire de la mort. Halt, here begins the empire of the dead. The phrase greets every modern visitor to the public ossuary, but rumours insist that earlier, deeper portals display stranger warnings. Rhymed couplets in dog Latin, Masonic ciphers, even a snatch of Virgil's Aeneid turned upside down. None have been officially confirmed. Parisian authorities deny the inscriptions. Yet cataphiles, the unofficial explorers of this underworld, swap stories that flicker like candle shadows. We drift with them tonight, though only in thought. Follow the hush of your own breath, one beat slower now. Silence carries secrets. Freemasons in the quarry halls. On a February night in 1791, so the legend runs, members of the Loge des Neuf Sœurs descended by concealed stair near the Rue de la Montagne Sainte-Geneviève. Among them was botanist Louis-Jean-Marie Daubenton. They carried oak torches, brass compasses, and a freshly painted triangle of blue and gold. Their intent, to hold a clandestine initiation rite safe from revolutionary patrols. Surviving minutes of the lodge mention only La Salle Souterraine, without coordinates, but a modern graffito, a compass and square drawn in red ochre, appears half a kilometre beyond today's tourist loop ref. No mason has claimed it, no official has washed it away. Some marks, like memories, linger because no one dares erase them. The ceiling sweats, the walls keep counsel. In August 1810, the prefecture commissioned a 3-man survey team, led by Claude Nicolas Urbain, to chart unmapped drifts south of the Quartier Latin. They carried 2 oil lamps, 70 meters of chain for measuring, and a caged canary to test air quality. Their logbook records steady progress the first 2 days. On the third, entries cease after a single sentence. Vent coulisses anormales, odeur de sel. Search parties found only the abandoned chain, coiled neatly beside a pile of broken clamshells, fossils from the Lutetian Sea. Urbain and his assistants were never recovered. Was it sudden collapse? Carbon dioxide pooling in a low chamber? Or, as later cataphile folklore claims, a hidden lake whose surface mirrors lantern light so perfectly that travellers step into its reflection and vanish? Official reports suggest rockfall. The chain, streaked with rust, is displayed today in the Musée des Égus. Inscriptions that should not exist. Torchlight strokes a pillar etched with entwined snakes and a 2-headed eagle. Another displays the date 1348, alongside a symbol resembling a plague doctor's mask. Quarry historians assert the dates are fanciful. Miners in the 14th century rarely inscribed such curiosities. Yet stone doesn't lie easily. Petrographic analysis once revealed soot trapped in grooves, carbon dated to the late medieval period. If miners left them, why? Some speculate the symbols served as liminaires, psychological thresholds, warning that shafts beyond lacked safe air. Others imagine coded messages from alchemists who harvested rare chalk nodules said to glow faintly when ground into elixir. Theories multiply like reflections in a dark mirror, each as unprovable as the next. One tale refuses to die, the phantom organist. Sometime in the 1890s, Parisians strolling the Luxembourg Gardens at dusk reported hearing music drift from ground grates, low chords melancholy, as though a cathedral choir master were practicing scales. Municipal gendarmes chalked it up to echoing barrel organs in nearby cafes. But cataphiles insist that a reclusive instrument maker named Armand van Hacker installed a harmonium portatif in a dry chamber near the old Port Man quarry. His son, forced to live above a busy tannery, retreated nightly to play where no neighbours would complain. There he died, of what cause none can agree. Cataphiles claim the harmonium remains, ivory keys warped by humidity, bellows ruptured, yet still releasing a single ghost note if pressed just so. No official survey lists an organ, yet a few explorers recall a chamber that smells of cedar, where dust motes swirl to unbidden chord. Dreams sometimes borrow the tune, carrying it above ground to lull restless sleepers. The Revolution's hidden dead. During the terror of 1793 to 1794, executioners at Place de la Révolution, today's Place de la Concorde, hardly paused between strokes. Initial burials filled mass pits at the Madeleine Cemetery, but fear of contagion and the press of daily death forced officials to seek more discreet disposal. Contemporary correspondence hints at nocturnal wagons rattling south across the Pont Neuf, piled with canvas-wrapped bodies. Where did they go? Some likely reached Picpus Cemetery. Others may have slipped through half-forgotten service ramps into the catacombs, delivered to ossuary workers who had no time to arrange bones in tidy rows. Modern spelunkers have stumbled upon planches pourries, rotten planks, ceiling alcoves where air tastes sweetly rancid, like old apples. City guards seal such finds swiftly, citing public safety. But rumours insist these pockets hold the last unmarked remains of Girondins, Jacobins, or perhaps the royal chemist Antoine Lavoisier, who once studied gases that now muffle his name. The Lake of Bones. Deeper still lies the Lac de Catula, a subterranean pool the colour of bruised glass. Water seeps from the gold clay above, cold as melted snow. Its depth, estimated at 5 meters, renders the bottom invisible. Cataphiles tell of skeletal fragments looming like pale lilies just beneath the surface. No academic dive has verified the claim, yet black and white photographs from the 1960s show knee-deep explorers holding candles that reflect on water speckled with floating vertebrae. Some say the lake was an accidental sump, created when quarrymen breached an aquifer in the 18th century. Others attribute it to a collapsed ossuary dating to the plague years. All agree, sound there is uncanny. Drop a pebble, and after the splash, you hear nothing. No echo, no ripple, as though the pool absorbs remembrance itself. On the 2nd of September 2004, police conducting a routine training exercise in the 14th arrondissement discovered a fully equipped underground cinema. Rows of carved stone benches, a screen fashioned from white sheets, and electrical lines pirated from the metro. A sign at the entrance read simply, "Interdit au ordinaire." A second chamber held a kitchen and a pressure cooker, filled with what officers first feared to be explosives, but later identified as popcorn. The mystery hosts were never caught. When investigators returned days later, all equipment was gone, replaced by a note, "Ne cherchez pas." Some whisper this cinema was organized by Le Mexicain de Perforation, an art collective dedicated to creating voids in the urban grid. Others believe it was merely another phase in the cataphile tradition, to carve islands of light in the empire of dark. Whatever the truth, authorities poured concrete plugs into adjoining corridors. Even so, faint projector hum still seems to flit through dreams of those who sleep nearby. Silence carries secrets. At the intersection of the Carrefour de la Tombe Bissoire, down a closed service shaft, stands a limestone slab thinner than a chapel door. It bears no hinges, yet cataphiles swear that on certain August nights it pivots silently, revealing a passage lined with polished black marble. They call it La Porte sans carte, the door without a map. Some say it leads to a Napoleonic powder magazine. Others claim a private mausoleum of a forgotten duke. No photograph exists. Those who have seen it rarely agree on location, distances, or even direction. Perhaps the door migrates, shifting like a phantom organ key, appearing only to those who already half dream. Echoes to the surface. Every myth circles back to daylight. A passerby near the Rue de Sasse feels a breath of cool air rising from a grill, carrying notes of damp chalk and something older: incense, candle fat, distant eel skin. A child swears the sewer grate hums like a cello at dusk. A baker closing shop pauses on his threshold, sure he hears footsteps beneath the flagstones. Rational minds dismiss such sensations as drafts and resonant pipes, yet memory rides these hints the way ivy climbs stone. Engineers of the Inspection Generale keep official silence, but one young surveyor, questioned off record, once murmured, "There are more rooms than we have names. We are custodians, not conquerors." Then he shrugged, offered no further detail, and stepped back into a lift that descended out of sight. At the far edge of legend, stories slow to a hush. Cataphiles speak of a chamber where the ceiling arches into a perfect dome, its ribs carved to mimic a star chart of the northern sky. At the center stands a plinth of limestone, supporting a simple wooden chair. No name marks the seat, no date defines the carving. Yet wanderers claim that if one rests there and snuffs their lantern, the dark begins to thrum like a distant lullaby, vibrating in the bones behind the ears. Some describe a chorus humming in chords of stone. Others hear the steady pulse of a subterranean heart. After a minute, or perhaps an hour, for time folds strangely underground, the listener rises lighter, as though a portion of their own memory now belongs to the catacombs. They leave, but the lullaby stays, stitched into the empire of the dead. Back on the surface, archivists tally finds, engineers revise maps, and police seal new breaches. Yet every closure is provisional. Limestone softens in damp air, mortar thirsts for repairs. Beneath cafes where waiters polish silver spoons, beneath metro carriages that rattle like sewing machines, the catacombs continue to inhale and exhale, keeping confidences in the cool breath between arches. Stories seep upward like groundwater, leaving white traces on cellar walls. They invite the curious, the reckless, and the dreamers who prefer whispers to daylight. Some secrets will surface, most will settle deeper, and when night drapes Paris in velvet, an attentive ear may still catch the faintest chord, as if an unseen organist tests a single key before the next movement begins.
Dinner above an ossuary. Elite versus common folk. The Marquise's Salon, 1778. Imagine candlelight, blossoming in cut glass sconces. The dining room of the Marquise de Belloy glows golden, its panelled walls the hue of clotted cream, its ceiling painted with cherubs chasing pink clouds. A quartet tunes quietly near a mantel of Carrara marble. 12 guests drift about the table, admiring porcelain dishes from Sèvres. On each plate rests a sugared violet. The Marquise lifts her lorgnette, praising the pastry chef. Her laugh is soft, measured, born of generations who have never hefted a quarry pick. Beneath her embroidered slippers, 20 meters of timber and sandstone separate polished parquet from raw ossuary. Skulls line the gallery, under the Rue d'Aume, like ivory paving stones. Femurs lie crosswise in decorative chevrons, an artistry devised by anonymous labourers paid in stale bread and thin wine. The Marquise does not know their names. She knows only that her architect assured her the foundations are secure, consolidé, a word she associates with fashionably thick cornices, not with pillars shoring a roof of fragile chalk. Above and below, worlds divide. Dinner begins with consommé of pigeon, its surface clear as rose quartz. Conversation circles recent sinkholes. A viscount recounts the collapse on the Rue d'Enfer. A bishop quotes scripture about houses built on sand. Laughter follows, polite, fleeting. Nobody wishes to linger on discomfort while the silverware sings against porcelain. Meanwhile, in the servants' corridor, Etienne Lenoir, the miner you met in segment 1, now hired as a scullery porter between night shifts, balances a tureen of broth. His back still aches from stacking tibias in the southern ossuary. When liveried footmen sweep by, he lowers his gaze. Etiquette demands that subterranean toil remain invisible at a surface feast. A toast to progress. The Marquise taps her crystal glass. She lauds King Louis's new inspection service, praising engineers who bind the earth with science. Her words rise like perfume, comforting guests who fear cracks in their drawing room floors. Yet as she speaks, Etienne recalls wooden braces creaking in humid dark, remembers lime dust settling on his tongue. He feels the room tilt, ever so slightly, as though balanced on breath alone. Parallel labours below, a night crew threads hemp ropes through freshly drilled eyelets, raising a keystone block into place. Each grunt echoes down intersecting halls. The rhythm of their labour matches the minuet tempo upstairs. Two worlds share a metronome, one of clinking crystal, the other of chisels knocking time against limestone. Interlude, the monk of bones. Not far from the dinner's subterranean mirror walks Friar Marcel, a Franciscan tasked with blessing new arrivals to the ossuary. He moves through the dark with a stub of beeswax candle and a leather prayer book. Each skull he touches receives the same whisper, memento vivere, remember to live. He does not hear the quartet above, but sometimes the floor dust quivers, and he imagines angels tuning lutes somewhere overhead. Dessert and disclosure. Back in the salon, peaches poached in sugared wine arrive. The bishop, cheeks flushed, relays a rumour. Revolutionaries plot against the crown, hiding pamphlets in quarry shafts. A baron scoffs, declaring the poor too busy earning bread to hatch conspiracies. Etienne, pouring coffee, stifles a smile. He has seen slogans chalked on pillars. Le trône vacille, the throne totters. He wonders which truth will surface first, the weakness of limestone or the anger of empty stomachs. At 1 o'clock, the final carriage departs. The Marquise's steward douses candles, chandeliers dim like waning stars. Etienne collects bread crusts for his sister, pockets a bruised pear, then slips into an alley. He walks a block, descends a familiar stair, and joins the bone-stacking crew for the night shift. Sweat beads on his collar even in the chill. Above, the salon windows glaze with frost. Below, hammers resume their steady heartbeat. Horsemen's Boulevards, 1860s. Leap forward 3 generations. Baron Georges Eugène Haussmann draws broad arrows across city plans, slicing medieval warrens into sunlit boulevards. Demolition crews raise tenements. Steam shovels bite cobblestone. But before a street widens, engineers check the catacomb map. Will the soil bear the weight of 5-story facades?
Masonry rings are added. Iron beams extend like ribs. Horseman's vision of imperial grandeur relies on joints mortared by men who live in cramped attics, cough chalk at dawn, and seldom walk the avenues they hold aloft. The Seamstress and the Senator. On a spring afternoon in 1867, seamstress Clémence Proul threads silken trim onto a gown commissioned by a senator's wife. The atelier floor vibrates under distant pile drivers. Clémence grew up near the Place d'Enfer Rochereau and remembers playing in sunken courtyards, the surface scars of forgotten shafts. She knows how to read cracks in plaster like fortunes. When a hairline fissure appears above the workroom door, she pauses the sewing machine and silently counts heartbeats until the tremor fades. Upstairs, the senator's wife practices her curtsy, unaware of the stitcher's small act of vigilance. 2 funerals, 1 city. That autumn, Clémence's father, once a quarryman, dies of lung disease. His coffin travels down the steep steps of Saint-Jacques-du-Haut-Pas, escorted by neighbors carrying candles. 2 streets away, the senator's mother, Madame de Salery, receives a stately cortege, horses plumed in black, hearse draped in velvet. Both funerals pass over the same ossuary vault. Neither family thinks of the 6 million who lie beneath. Yet Frère Marcel's successor still walks the corridors, whispering, Memento vivere. 20th century shifts. By 1935, electricity hums through maintenance tunnels. Metro trains carve sparks, their rumble threading deepest galleries. Wealth measures itself now in automobiles and balconies overlooking the Seine. Yet, elevator shafts must dodge hidden voids. Architects scan century-old vellum before pouring concrete. The distance between silk glove and stone dust narrows with each new floor. During the German occupation, resistance fighters hide mimeograph presses in off-map chambers. Gestapo patrols fear ambush in the dark. They conscript sewer workers as guides. Above, collaborationist banquets continue at the Hotel Ritz. Below, pamphlets roll off presses urging revolt. Modern echoes. Today, joggers circle the Luxembourg Garden while smartphone screens track heart rates. Few notice a vent releasing cool air scented faintly of chalk. Tourists queue for the official catacombs entrance, descending a sanitized path of slick tiles and electric lamps. They glimpse artistry in bone walls, snap photos, ascend again into daylight cafes, serving croissants on plates not unlike those in the Marquise's salon. But step 1, block south at midnight, find a rusted service hatch, and you might hear distant tapping. A cataphile's chisel updating a map, or perhaps a miner's ghost still aligning a ring vault. Above, a penthouse owner selects a playlist for dinner guests. Between them, only limestone and memory. Retracing the spiral. Together we ascend the same worn stair imagined at the start. One slow step, then another. Each riser lifts us nearer the hush of night streets. Lantern light fades behind, replaced by the softer silver of moon on slate rooftops. Stone cools beneath fingertips. Heartbeat steadies. Night air of Paris. We emerge into narrow lanes washed quiet by small hours. The Seine drifts under bridges like a ribbon of pewter. Far bells mark 2:30, their echoes folding gently into the folds of your blanket. Somewhere, a baker lights his first oven, a newspaper cart trundles. Above-ground life begins anew, while the catacombs slip back into contemplative dark. Remember, 6 million sleepers lie in orderly silence below. Engineers still patrol, candles replaced by LEDs, yet purpose unchanged. To listen for cracks, to steady the ceiling. Museums conserve Guillaume's plans. School children trace quarry lines with curious fingers. History does not shout here. It breathes. Your pillow is softer than limestone dust. Your room warmer than a quarry hall. Still, fragments of the underworld linger. The hush that invites slower breaths, the sense that every wall keeps gentle counsel. Let them soothe rather than stir. As your eyes grow heavy, recall Frère Marcel's parting phrase carried through centuries. Memento vivere. Remember to live and also to rest. The city exhales. So do you. Inhale calm. Exhale weight. If dreams wander down stone corridors tonight, know that the ceiling listens, the walls breathe, and silence carries only peace. Allow sleep to fold around you like a cloak. Tomorrow the sun will rise on boulevards secure, cafes fragrant, and stories waiting patiently beneath. For now, drift. The catacombs keep watch.